In today's video, we'll be exploring histograms, some of the ways that we can create those in Power BI, whether that be via switch function in DAX, whether that be using the Power BI groupings or custom visuals. We'll also then take a look at the group by function to look at how we can categorize and group our data together. Histograms are really useful during the modeling phase to support the identification of outliers to help you understand where you've got challenges in your data, what might need to be investigated, but also through the communication and insights phase, providing your stakeholders, providing your report consumers vital information that they need to help them make decisions. So to get started, there's a couple of ways that we can do histograms. I'll quickly show you how to go and get the histogram visual from the marketplace. I'll show you how to use the group by function in Power BI to build your own histogram. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. And then the last method is to use the DAX function called switch. You should see on screen the timings of when they will appear if you want to forward to those sections. You can use the marketplace, follow these instructions and do a search for histogram to be able to find available histogram visuals. You'll see that there's a few available. Just select which one you want and select add. Okay, so let's get started with creating our own histogram. So I have this visualization here, this bar chart, stacked column chart, sorry. I want to create bins to break this data down to see how many times it represents in the first 20 days, 40 days, etc. There's a couple of ways to do it. You can either go into your data. You can select the column that you want, the day from open to close. In column tools here, you can just hit data groups, new data groups, or the quickest way to do it is select the column that you want, right click and select new group. So what we have is a number of options. We'll give it a name in a moment. We have a group type. So we're going to concentrate on bins. We'll cover list at the end. List is more on text-based columns. We can two options here. We can select the size of the bins. So how big do we want the bin? So this will set this to 20, so it will increment every 20 values. Or you can say I want a number of bins. And if you say I want 20 bins, it will work out the average bin size based on the minimum value here and the maximum value here. So I'm going to go for size of bins 20 and give this a new name. Great, so that's added that column there. I'll just quickly drag this into the axis field of the chart I've got here. And as you can see, what it's done, it's looked at each increment of 20 and the number of records that are available in each of the bins. Now, it's not giving me good data. There's definitely data there showing as 0K. So if we select then the data labels, select none, we can see the total numbers here distributed. Now, as you can see, there's a very heavy focus in the first bin up to 20. Okay, so I'm going to want to analyze that a bit more. So I'm just going to create another bin using the same method. Okay, so I now have this other column here. I've created this, bins equals 2. I can drag that into the visual. I'm going to drag it under the 20. So the reason I've dragged it under the 20, it gives you then that hierarchy. You can either drill down the entire set and look at the distribution of data, or you can just select a specific column. I want to see the distribution of the first 20. So that will give you a breakdown, the number of times a call was in each bin. Okay, so that's how to use the group by function to create bins. I'm going to recreate one using switch in DAX. So I'll just recreate that and we'll talk through that in a moment. We now have the additional column created using the switch function. So after switch, we're using true to say the point you evaluate the first record as true, stop evaluating. Then we're going through days open to close, and we're saying if it's less than 1, return 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. And then the last number is 700 because I think the maximum data was around 650. So using switch, you can be more flexible and you can break the data down into the chunks that you want rather than specific bins of every 20 or so. So this is a great way to really analyze your data and really focus on a specific area. So this is now really, really useful. If you're in the modeling phase, if you're trying to understand your data and how to build up your model and look at variables and associations and correlations and averages, understanding this data here will really help you. Just get rid of this. You can see here we've got averages of the average open to close. Just get rid of that. Average open to close, average open to update and update. So these averages here will be skewed by some of these really large numbers. If you're trying to define the average number of calls per handler so you can resource your staff accordingly, you might not want to include these, or you might want to investigate them more. The reason that you might not want to include them, purely it could be that there's issues with the data. So these calls may have been closed in days, but if you've got something up to 600 days, nearly 2 years, you know that there's a problem with that data. So it's great in the modeling phase, helps you make decisions on how you're going to build your model, but also in the communicating insights phase when we're publishing your data to your stakeholders or report consumers. They can also see the distribution of data. So when they're making their decisions on the data, they've got this useful information to help. Okay. So lastly, just quickly, how we're going to use the group by function on the source of calls. So here we've got a number of sources. If we look at the methods, we've got several here. Now I want to categorize those into shorter groups. So once again, select source, hit new group. Right, we now have a slightly different looking screen than we had before. We can no longer select bins. It's only list. It's understood this is text, so it's qualitative data. And we have the data here that we can potentially group. Now for this example, let's look at web, Twitter, and email. I can group these as internet-based. So these will be anything that's come through the internet. We can then group maybe anything that's come through a phone. With our telecoms, and if you check this box here, it's great. It just categorizes everything else into other. So select OK. Now that we have that, we've got this source group, so that's what we left the name as. If we drag this up here, you can see automatically grouping and classifying our data. You know, use cases for this are great. If you're looking at countries and you want to classify them into regions or cities, into states, etc., this is really, really useful for you. And that's it. That's today's video. If you liked it, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.